Hey everyone! Judging by the title, you can probably already guess what I'll be sharing my thoughts on today. It's seasonal content in Destiny 2. I'll give some quick impressions on Season of Dawn, but I really wanted to focus on something that I think the game is missing that just isn't really being accomplished with this seasonal formula. Is Season of Dawn worth it? Well, if you play Destiny and want new stuff to invest your time into, then yes. Skip the next few cups of coffee and you've already made your money back. Is it going to rekindle your love for the franchise and pull you away from every other new game out there? No. The simplest way I can describe Season of Dawn is if Curse of Osiris was actually good. The loot is really cool, the weapons and armor are mostly all desirable, with interesting perks and interesting combinations of perks. The Sundial is your average Horde mode experience, better than Vex Offensive, but that's not a very high bar. If you have a team that's even somewhat competent, the activity is short enough and enjoyable enough to where you can quickly blast through it multiple times and not want to immediately abandon it forever. You're also rewarded pretty handsomely after some investment into the obelisks. I'm already getting 2 weapons per run, with I believe up to 4 weapons per run being the max after all of the upgrades. And the obelisks themselves are much more in-depth than I had anticipated, and each of them feels like a mini Chalice of Opulence that you can invest into. The Season Pass again is one of the highlights of this season. It was executed just as well, if not better than last season. And of course you have all of the other seasonal items, the artifact, the ritual weapons, seasonal mods, and you get the picture. The other main draw to this season is the Saint 14 story missions, the first of which was one of the more compelling missions we've seen so far, and it was the closest we've gotten so far to taking part in historic battles or moments throughout the Destiny universe's history with famous characters from the lore, which I've always wanted to do, by the way. As cool as this first mission was though, I'm curious how these are going to play into the bigger picture, if at all. Unless you're sitting there reading every lore card, I can't say that I feel like we've broken any new ground on the whole evolving story front. It still feels like we're drifting from one completely separate problem to the next without addressing the bigger picture. Like, I still want to know what the deal was with that mysterious artifact at the end of Shadowkeep, and are we not even going to talk about the fact that we went inside a giant Dorito and encountered the darkness? Seems like we just kind of forgot about it already, like Uldren and the Dreaming City Curse. On one hand, I appreciate the new theme that each season brings, but on the other, there's only so many times I can care about the Red Legion and them trying to mess with the timelines. It's a good season of content so far, but there's just something missing. This something that's missing isn't really the fault of Season of Dawn specifically. It's more so the fault of the entire seasonal formula that we've been seeing since the first standalone one, which was Black Armory. Since Black Armory, seasonal content has been filled with the following: variations of horde modes, lots of busy work, experiences that are created to be experienced when they are added and aren't nearly as relevant 6 months later. And as of year 3, those experiences are just completely removed at the end of their 3-month period. And to add to that last point, seasons are filled with a lot of additions and very little refreshes or reworks or redesigns, however you want to phrase it. Now, I could also list plenty of positives to these seasons, but these main negatives seem very relevant to how a lot of people are feeling right now and how I'm sort of feeling right now. The biggest things I could point to that suffer from these issues are actually core modes, staple Destiny experiences, Strikes, and the Crucible. It's the bread and butter of Destiny, right? You could also lump Gambit into this, but I don't really want to talk about Gambit, to be honest. Strikes and the Crucible were 2 of the most enjoyable activities in all of Destiny 1. Besides raids, they were arguably the main draw to the game. If you weren't raiding, you were almost certainly running Heroic Strikes or playing PvP. Definitely far more than you were playing Court of Oryx or Archon's Forge or Prison of Elders. In Destiny 2, at least for me, the majority of my time for the past year has been spent in patrol or in a horde mode style activity, whether it be the Forges, Reckoning, the Menagerie, Vex Offensive, or the Sundial. I have pretty much avoided regular strikes completely, and I have mostly just played PvP for quests or for the Iron Banner. This is the complete inverse of how I experienced Destiny 1. And I think it's a big reason why you might see people saying that Destiny 1 DLCs or Destiny 2 Year 1 DLCs were a better format than this seasonal stuff. I don't agree, but I understand why they're saying that. because in those traditional DLCs, the core modes of Destiny felt more important. In the first game, you had a ton of memorable strikes with strike intros.
Remember that Centurion Oryx took right after you landed on the Dreadnought? Then the Centurion and the Taken Ogre tried to stop you from killing the king? Didn't work.
Really cool strike-specific weapons and armor, and then strike scoring. You also had a ton of modes in Destiny 1's Crucible, ranging from fun modes like Spark to more competitive modes like Trials of Osiris, and a ton of loot to go with it. In Destiny 2's first year, we got a bunch of strikes, strike-specific weapons and cosmetics, albeit not as good as the first game's stuff, but they were still there, and we also had Trials of the Nine with its own loot. But that focus has really shifted in the last year to be all about introducing new activities, new variations of stuff that we already have, and new limited time investments. And now that every time I get a quest that makes me return to any of those core modes that I used to sink hundreds of hours into, I just think, oh no, please, I don't want to run strikes again. So it really feels like Bungie has forgotten about what made Destiny 1 so lovable. Despite how much you hated Thorn, or how much you hated insta-kill sticky grenades or whatever, you still played the hell out of Crucible. And despite how much you despised those heat-seeking Shrieker orbs, or the Boomer Knights, or getting bodied by a Phalanx shield, you still ran the hell out of strikes. Because both strikes and PvP were fun, they had rewards, and they were extremely addicting. You just always wanted to play one more match. Now, let's be fair. We gotta give a little bit of credit here to what Bungie did to Nightfalls and Shadowkeep. Nightfall ordeals are fantastic. They are exactly the kind of stuff the game needs. They have farmable materials and exotics, high-end rewards that are actually extremely valuable. They have multiple tiers of difficulty that lets people challenge themselves and get better rewards for doing the harder difficulty. The two lower tiers of Nightfall Ordeal have actual Nightfall matchmaking, while the two higher tiers have a ton of new modifiers. Like, this is exactly the kind of stuff I want to see for strikes. I don't mean just crank up the difficulty and add champions. I mean like an actual rework of the mode. I want to see strike armor and weapons that are themed around the boss, strike scoring with bounties to go along with it, new creative modifiers, and better, more useful rewards instead of getting 5 blues every run that just end up crowding up my postmaster. And the same goes for the Crucible as well. Where are the enhancement prisms and descendant shards? Where are the Crucible specific weapons and armor? Hell, where's the reward system for Crucible? It's non-existent. And all of this needs to be addressed before Bungie should even consider bringing back Trials of Osiris or any kind of Trials, because, well, to be honest, we have Trials back right now, and I'm not going to go play it because it doesn't offer anything worth my time. So you start to see the real issue here with seasonal content. Bungie is entirely focused on adding new stuff. And to an extent, that's fine. I like having new activities. I like having tons of new stuff to look forward to that's different from what we had in the past. But they haven't revamped any of the stuff that's made Destiny, Destiny. I didn't buy each new expansion in Destiny 1 for a Court of Oryx or Archon's Forge style mode, and I'm starting to feel like that I'm at my limit for those kind of activities in Destiny 2, regardless of whether or not they have great loot, which, by the way, I'm seriously out of vault space, and I'm probably only carrying about 1/5 of all the weapons and the armor in the game, so yeah. You could also argue that things like vendor refreshes and factions are also really two big parts of Destiny 1 that have been absent for a long time, and I would agree that not having those two things to look forward to definitely exacerbates the burnout that I've been feeling towards these new seasonal experiences. Let's say that tomorrow, Bungie comes out and says that they're going to put a hold on seasonal content for a while, and instead they're going to focus on revamping the reward system for strikes and PvP, revamping both of those activities themselves, maybe freshen up the Menagerie with new weapons and armor, bring back most of the Year 1 weapons and give them new perks, and invest their resources into revamping factions and Trials of Osiris. Bungie says they're going to do all of that in replace of any new ritual weapons, any new seasonal activities, any new seasonal weapons or armor, or any new quests or exotics, which means you won't really have any new content to look forward to for a while, but it would be for the greater good of the game, so to speak. What would you say? Let me know in the comments, and that wraps up my thoughts on Destiny 2's seasonal content and Season of Dawn. Thank you for watching, everybody.